Are you craving for women's voices in the Buddhist literature? As a Buddhist and feminist, I am. I'm so inspired by the Buddha's teachings, but so sad to see women's status as second-class citizens in the Buddhist community. So today I'm going to share with you poems written by the first generation of enlightened women and compare 3 translations so you can pick out what's the best for you. Welcome back to Meditation with Song. When I first read Therigatha, the poems by the earliest Buddhist nuns, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Hearing their voices and their stories gives me strength and hope. If this was feasible for them, it is possible for me too. This enlightened woman came from all walks of life, from princess to mothers and wives to sexual workers. In their poems, they do not shy away from their challenges. A wife who's exhausted of domestic duties, a widow who is struck by poverty. But they all persevered through their challenges, and when they reach full liberation, their expression is full of joy, full of life and freedom. These inspiring poems were first composed orally in an ancient Indian language, then later rewritten in Pali. We have many English translations available. In 1909, Caroline Rhys Davies published the first English translation from Pali. It's an accurate and poetic translation, but the English is quite dated, so I'm going to skip this one. In 1971, K.R. Norman produced the second translation. It's almost a word-for-word translation, so I'm going to skip this one too. I will focus on 3 popular versions. I'll share with you my experience reading each one of them and compare side by side how one same verse is interpreted differently. A spoiler, the second one by Susan Murcott is my favorite, and the third one by Maddie Wingast is the most controversial. So let's start with the first one, Therigatha, Poems by the First Buddhist Woman by Charles Hallisey. Charles Hallisey is a senior lecturer on Buddhist literature at Harvard University, so he's taking a pretty scholarly approach in presenting this translation. As you can see, on the left side is a transliteration of the Pali text, and on the right side is an English translation. He also provides abbreviations, notes to the text, notes to the translation, and glossary in the appendix. I feel this version is targeting at a scholarly audience. I almost feel like reading these poems in a research paper. For this reason, it is the thickest and most expensive of the 3, $35 on Amazon. But if you just want Charles' translation and extensive notes without the Pali text, they actually published a new version last year, Poems of the First Buddhist Woman. It's $18.24 on Amazon. Here comes my favorite one, The First Buddhist Woman by Susan Murcott. I love Susan's translation for 2 reasons. First, I love how Susan woven together the life stories of the nuns with explanations of their historical, social, and cultural context. Reading the poems alone is like looking at the snapshot of the wise woman. But when I learn about their life stories and their obligations as daughters, mothers, wives, and widows, they come alive. It's like all of a sudden, I meet many sisters who are traveling ahead of me on the same path. Second, this is the only version among the 3 that's actually translated by the woman, and she's a feminist scholar. Susan Murcott has quite an interesting background. She's actually an expert on safe drinking water. She was drawn to Buddhism as a peace activist and has spent more than 10 years researching and translating this text. The feminist side of her openly questions sexist beliefs in Buddhism. Why are women portrayed as dangerous to men? Why is it considered the greatest merit for women to be reborn as a man? The scholar side of her did extensive research. The woman in her connect to the ancient wise woman at a heart-to-heart level. As a whole package, Susan's translations speak directly to my heart. I also like how Susan reorganized the poems. Instead of following Therigatha's original structure that groups poems by their lengths, Susan regrouped them by the identities of a woman. For example, Chapter 4 is on wise women and teachers, Chapter 6 on wives, and Chapter 8 on prostitutes, courtesans, and beautiful women. I feel this restriction brings even more life to her translation, and it's much easier for me to locate a poem that I want to read again. The only drawback of this version is Amazon charges too much for its paperback version. Its list price is $15.95, but Amazon asks for more than 21 bucks. So I bought the ebook, which is $12.99. Still, I highly recommend Susan Marcus' translation. Perfect for the general audience. So the first Free Woman by Matty Wingast is controversial because it's not a faithful translation of the Therigatha. So basically, he read the Pali text and all the English translations and then meditated on the poems so he can connect to their core teachings. Then he let the ancient wisdom re-emerge in a contemporary voice. So it's almost like he is a modern medium that channels the ancient enlightened woman. The new poems, some of them are very close to the originals, some are similar but with shifts here and there, while others are quite different from the original ones. So when his poems were first marketed as a translation, it received huge pushbacks. The publisher, Shambhala Publications, actually cleared the old edition and reissued this book as original poems inspired by Therigatha. Another criticism is that Matty Wingast, a lay modern man, silenced the earliest nuns' voices and replaced them with his own. To this, Wingast's response is, quote unquote, "Perhaps the best I can say is that I never intended to translate anything, but the voices of this woman spoke to me and deeply moved me." And he did put effort into including women's energy and perspective into his work. The majority of his composition was done at Aloka Vihara Forest Monastery. It's a training monastery for women. And he worked very closely with Bhikkhuni Ananda Bodhi, a female monastic. I really enjoyed reading Matty Wingast's first Free Woman along with Susan Marcus' first Buddhist Woman. Currently, this is $16.79 on Amazon, and it's the shortest among the three. Now I'm going to compare side by side how one poem is interpreted differently so you can directly experience the styles. I picked the poem written by Chitta. She practiced seriously but did not reach enlightenment until her old age. The breaking through moment happened when she reached the top of Vulture Peak, which takes a lot of stamina to get there. From the top, she saw a magnificent view and wrote this poem of enlightenment. Chitta, translated by Charles Hallisey. Even though I am emaciated, exhausted, and very weak, still I go on, leaning on a stick, climbing the mountain. I have thrown off my outer robe, turned my bowl over. I lean against the rock, after splitting open the mass of mental darkness. Chitta, translated by Susan Marcus. Though I am thin, sick, and lean on a stick, I have climbed up Vulture Peak. Robe thrown down, bowl turned over, leaned on a rock. Then great darkness opened. Chitta, Heart, reimagined by Matty Wingast. Somehow I kept climbing, though tired, hungry, and weak. Old too. At the top of the mountain, I spread my outer robe on a rock to dry, set down my staff and bowl, took a deep breath, and looked around. It was windy up there. As I was leaning back against a large gray rock, the darkness I had carried up and down the many mountains slipped off my shoulders and swept itself away on the wind. That's for today. Which version do you think is the best for you? Leave me a comment below. Also, check out the guided meditation I created for women empowerment.